Let's start with Max Weber's legal framework. Max Weber was a sociologist who studied how law works in society, not whether it is good or bad. He focused on rationality, meaning how logical and systematic legal systems are. His ideas came mainly from Economy and Society 1922, where he said law can be understood by looking at how legal decisions are made. He introduced two key concepts: formal rationality and substantive rationality. Formal rationality means judges allow clear rules and procedures. Decisions are predictable and consistent, and it is common in modern legal system. Substantive rationality means decisions are influenced by moral, religious, or political values, where it focuses on justice or fairness, not just rules. Weber classified law using two questions. First, is the decision based on rules or values? Second, is it made logically or traditionally? These are called the ideal types, which is formal versus substantive and rational versus irrational. These are analytical tools, not real legal system. In short, Weber helps us to understand the tension between legal certainty and justice in modern law. Thank you.
Now, let's move on to constitutional rights in legal contemporary. Constitutional rights underpin modern democratic legal system by protecting individual liberties from the abuse of state power. Rights such as freedom of speech, personal liberty, fair trial, and equality before the law are entrenched in the Constitution as a supreme law, which ensure that all state action remains subject to constitutional scrutiny. From Max Weber's perspective, constitutional rights reflect formal legal rationality because they are codified, general, and enforced through institutionalized legal procedures. Judicial application of these rights through established doctrines and precedents promote predictability, consistency, and legal scrutiny, supporting Weber's view of modern law as rule-based and bureaucratic. However, constitutional rights also reveal the limits of Weber's framework. Constitutional provisions are often broadly worded and value-laden, requiring judicial interpretation that balances legal rules and social considerations. This introduces elements of substantive rationality, as courts rely on value-based reasoning to resolve disputes. As a result, modern constitutional law demonstrates a hybrid legal rationality, combining formal legal structure with substantively rational judicial interpretation.
Equity is a system of jurisprudence based on concise and fairness, designed to step in when the strict legal rules are too rigid or produce an unjust result. Equity can be divided into two. Strict law focus on forms and binding precedents. Example, the contract is signed as you must pay. And another one, equity, focus on substance and morality. You would tricks into signing, so enforcing it would be unconscionable. Examples of equity in modern system. Although modern court now administer both law and equity together, equity principles still provide unique remedies. Injunctions, for example, injunctions, a court order to stop someone from doing something, stopping a company from polluting which money damage cannot fix. The second one, specific performance, forcing a party to fulfill a contract, example, transferring a unique piece of land rather than just paying for the breach. The third, the third, the third example is a trust, separating legal ownership to trustee from equitable benefit to the beneficiary, preventing trustee from abusing their legal title. Equity versus Weber formal rationality. Equity is a direct challenge to Weber concepts of formal rationality. Weber ideas modern law should be a less predictable machine where decisions are calculated purely from reading rules. Formal rationality. If here anything else was irrational. The challenge equity reintroduced substantive rationality, ethical values like fairness and justice into the system. It disrupts Weber's machines by allowing judges to use discretions and bypass formal rules to achieve a morally correct outcomes.
Next, we move on to international human rights law. So the first one is on the definition application of international human rights law in modern legal system. So international human rights law refers to a body of international legal rules that aim to protect fundamental rights and human dignity. These rights are derived from key international instruments such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as well as various treaties and conventions. Once a state ratifies these instruments, it is expected to incorporate human rights principles into its domestic legal system. In modern legal system, international human rights law influences constitutional interpretation, guides judicial review, and limits the exercise of a state power, especially in cases involving equality, dignity, and fairness. The second one is on how international human rights law interacts with Weber's framework of rationality. Max Weber distinguished between formal rationality and substantive rationality in law. Formal rationality emphasizes strict rules, procedures, and legal certainty, while substantive rationality focuses on justice, equity, and moral values. International human rights law encourages courts to move beyond rigid legal rules. When judges apply human rights principles, they are required to consider broader values such as human dignity, equality, and fairness. This reflects a shift from formal rationality towards substantive rationality in modern legal system. And lastly, on Weber's concept of authority and its relevance to international human rights law, Weber identified three forms of authority, which is traditional, charismatic, and legal rational authority. International human rights law is not based on traditional authority, which relies on custom, nor on charismatic authority, which depends on individual leadership. Instead, it is grounded in legal rational authority, as it is established through treaties, international institutions, and state consent. However, although its authority is legal rational in nature, the content of international human rights law is strongly influenced by moral and ethical consideration. This demonstrates on how modern law blends formal legal authority with substantive moral reasoning.
We're going to move on to the next part, which is Weber framework still applicable? And we know that Weber emphasized on formal rationality and substantive rationality. In this contemporary legal system, formal rationality still applies into the legal system as Malaysia operates under a written constitution and detailed statute, which reflect Weber's idea of rule-based legality. Courts are required to decide case by applying enacted law and establish legal rule. However, contemporary legal system increasingly incorporate substantive rationality, prioritizing values such as justice, ethical, moral, human rights, but these operate within a fundamental formal legal framework.
Lastly, is Weber framework is still applicable? Formal legal rationality forms the backbone of modern legal system, preserving the stability and objectivity that Weber described. However, the growing influence of equity and international human rights law demonstrate that modern legal system increasingly incorporates substantively rationality, where justice, fairness, and moral value play significant role in decision making. So that's all from our group. Thank you.